All right, welcome everybody to this episode of Prodigy Simply Fit podcast. I'm Andrew Hamill with Prodigy Fitness, and today I am joined by Molly Obert of Eat Real Food Nutrition. She's a local nutritionist, and super excited to have her on and talk. As we record this, we're a couple of weeks away from 2023. When this gets released, it'll be 2023. But just to talk about some tips and tricks and things on how to eat better, eat more consciously, things like that for the new year. So Molly, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So why don't we start off with just kind of a little bit of a background? Like how did you get into, nutrition, starting to eat real food nutrition, things like that?
Okay. So, I mean, as literally as far back as I can remember, if anything was ever, I'll just say wrong with me, like if I was tired or didn't feel well, my mind always went to, well, what did I eat? And that was like when I was a kid, I would always think that. And it could have been my mom. I had an interesting set of parents. Like my mom was a nurse, but also kind of they were sort of hippies, right? Like, so she was like this whole food kind of lady, and she made her own yogurt and she made her own granola. And my dad, every year when he would till the garden, he'd take a couple more inches of our backyard so the garden could be bigger and bigger.
Sure.
So they just like they lived off the earth, really. And it came out of necessity for them. My mom stayed home with us and didn't have an income, and my dad was a teacher. And in the 70s and 80s, that wasn't, as it still is, not the highest paying job. So literally in the summer, they could have a lower food budget because we got food from the garden. Right. So there was just always this thread of nutrition and eating clean, real, whole foods. And then the connection for me was, well, what could I eat differently to feel differently? So that just always stayed with me. And so through college, I was just exhausted through college. And I was like, well, maybe you should be, because you're not sleeping well and you're staying up late and doing things that college students do and whatnot. So I would go to like the health center and say, I'm exhausted. And they would say, let's test for mono. And I wouldn't have mono. And then we would move on. Right.
You're right.
And so when I got out of college, I was like, okay, I'm going to figure this out, And I got diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder of the thyroid. And the first thing I said to the doctor is like, okay, so what can I do about it? And he said, nothing. You'll just take this pill for the rest of your life. And I was like, that is not going to sit well with me.
Right.
So I found a nutritionist at that point for myself. And that would really be kind of the start of my journey of knowing specifically what really food could do for me. Before, I was just like kind of guessing. So I really turned things around with my health and got more energy. And that was like 25 years ago.
Yeah.
And so I think a good note for people who are trying to learn more about their nutrition and do better is that it's not like 30 days and you got it figured out. Like I'm talking 25 years and I still go, oh, wow, I need more iodine. Like there's always something. And so if you can accept that it's a journey, that it really is. So I just, with all of that interest in nutrition, I became the friend that people said, oh, Molly, what do you think about this? And should I be supplementing with D? And like, how's this food? Read this label for me. And I would go shopping with my mom, and you would see people in the aisle with a list that they had gotten from their doctor or even a nutritionist. And my mom would say, oh, my daughter can help you with that, because I was wonderful. I was wonderful from the day I was born. It was just this fantastic person that I was. And I was like, oh, I don't.
Yeah, right.
I don't have that expertise, but I knew where the coconut oil was, and I knew where they could find these things. So I was like, I like doing this. I like helping people. I like having the answers and being able to guide. And so I started, I started consulting with people, started with friends, and like, how could their family do better? How could they prep meals, things like that. And then probably it's been about 10 years that I got formal education in nutrition.
Okay.
And to backtrack, I was a teacher for about 10 years. So I had formal education and practice and education. So now I just put all of that together. So as an educator, I can help people with the plan that I have. As a consultant, I come up with a plan specifically to people's needs. And then as an educator, I can teach them why I've chosen that. Because if you know why you're doing something, you're more likely to keep doing it.
Oh, 100%.
And then, right. And then as a coach, I can say, okay, here's your existing lifestyle. How can we make that work? Or here's your existing lifestyle. This is how we have to change your existing lifestyle so that it can work. Because that, you can tell people eat more protein or whatever, but it's super helpful to guide them in how that can happen. Yeah. Did I answer your question?
No, you did. Yeah, no, it's funny. It actually brought up 2 points and kind of a funny one. So my mom is similar to your mom in that, like, anytime someone has like an ailment or whatever, she's like, oh, call Andrew, he'll be able to. And I'm like, Mom, I can't diagnose. Like, I don't know what it is. Like, yeah, like I like to think I'm good at what I do, but like, I'm not a doctor. I can't diagnose you, but yeah. And then secondly, you had mentioned, you kind of had that kind of conscious understanding of, hey, like I'm feeling off, like I'm tired or whatever. Like, it must have been something I ate. And I think that's super important for people, because I think without people realizing it, right? And you'll speak to this, like, our food is so manufactured these days that unfortunately a lot of times, like, some of the ailments that we deal with is because of our food, but because we've eaten it so much and for such a long time, like, we get used to feeling lethargic and we're like, oh, it's probably, I just need to go pound another, energy drink, versus, well, maybe we clean up our diet and we'll actually start to sleep better and feel better. And so I think that if people could be more conscious about the fact that our food is powerful in a lot of respects, especially in how we feel. And if we can clean that up, we're going to feel a lot better.
Yeah. I always, I'll have clients that come in and I take really like studious notes on those first few visits, because it's really fun to go back in a couple of months and say, hey, do you remember how your thinking was foggy? How is that now? Do you remember, so I think it's a lot of people are doing okay, they're fine. But also it's what I describe it as is, you would be fine if somebody were just like kind of standing on your foot, like not with all their weight, but like they were standing on your foot, you'd get used to it.
Yeah.
But when they take their foot off, it is such a relief.
Oh, absolutely.
You didn't realize, right?
Right. I didn't realize
so I think it's that way.
Yeah. Like, I didn't realize that, for lack of a better term, like, I felt like crap just because I felt like crap for so long. I was so used to it. And then the moment you start cutting out things or eating better or eating whole food like that, you're like, oh, like, I feel good. Like, this is what I'm supposed to feel like. Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, it gives you a great reference. And it doesn't take long. Like, once you start eating fresher food and like really paying attention to your diet, you can get that relief in 3 or 4 days. Sure. Like, it's just a great beginning, and it's good feedback. A lot of people will say, like, I'm just seeing more clearly, I'm thinking more clearly. And that is how powerful food is.
Yeah,
like you
absolutely.
said.
So speaking of that, like, what are some of the biggest questions that like your clients come to you with in regards to food? Like, what are the biggest, like, or maybe most frequently asked, like, questions that you're getting? Because I think similar to fitness, I think nutrition can be confusing for a lot of people because there is so much like opposite end of the spectrum conversation going on the internet, especially, right? Like, eat keto, cut out fat. Like, it's like, cut out carbs or cut out fat. It's like, eat low. It's like, what is right? What is wrong? Like, what are some of the biggest questions that you get?
That's such a good one, because there aren't a lot of specific questions. And I think it's because, like you said, there's so much out there. So what I get is just this confusion.
Yeah.
People will say, I just want to know what to eat. I just want to know what to eat. Just tell me what to eat. Because you could find, with so many things, if you research on the internet, you can find conflicting advice. You can find whatever advice you're looking for, actually. You can find it.
Right.
So it's like people want to know what to eat for them. And the frustrating thing for everybody is that that's really the big question. And unless I get people who have been to the doctor and the doctor says, you know what, you're not getting enough iron. And then I have a specific thing to dig into and really give them some specifics. But a lot of times there aren't a lot of questions, but there are a lot of like statements of, well, I know I shouldn't be eating whatever. Mm-hmm. And okay, so like an example, well, I know I shouldn't be eating carbs. I know I eat too many carbs. I know I should be fill in the blank. I know I should probably get back on that keto, like you said. I know mm-hmm. Because the messages are so strong that they don't even know to say, should I be doing keto? Right. Should I cut out carbs? It is such a strong message that we don't even know we're getting the wrong one. Right. It's not. So that's such an interesting question to think about what people ask. They don't ask a lot. They just come in saying, well, this is going to be hard for me because I'm not really good at food prep. Just the assumption, because how many beautiful right. food preps do you see out there on Instagram? Right. Like if you can't food prep, you just don't get to eat healthy. Yeah. Like that's, all these things that seem to be a prerequisite. Right. So the answer to that is there's a lot of I don't know if it's deprogramming, but sort of, right? Because sure. I can tease those things out. I know that doesn't make sense, but the messages are so strong and so like believable that right. There's this list of things that people think they should be doing because that's what we're told. Right. I think when you ask that too, I don't get this question a lot, but I got it once and I was like, huh, it stumps me a little. So a client said, he and his wife had done several diet plans. And he said, what are you doing that's different? And I was like, I know I'm different, right? This sure. is what I pride myself on. I can't go out there and just do another, we'll just eat less. We'll just count your calories. Right. We'll just bubble. You know what I mean? I can't do that and feel good about myself. So I was like, oh, how am I different? And you know what is ironic? I'm different because I'm talking to people about nutritious food. That is lacking. That's lacking in the other things. It's just, other things are just eat less, just count your calories, just cut out the carbs, just do those things. But there isn't a message of nutrition and food quality. Right. So that was like, oh, wow, this is totally different. I knew it was, but it was a great question because it made me come up with the answer.
Right. Yeah, I always get a kick out of that. You talk about like eating nutritious food and, I'll have a friend or a family member or whatever saying like, oh, I just started keto. And I'm like, okay, great. Awesome. And they're like, yeah, like I made these keto brownies. And I'm like, you made keto brownies? Like what's in them? And then they can't even like say the name of the sweetener that they had to go buy. And I'm like, you're putting in all of these chemicals in your body that like, it's not nutritious food for you. Right. And I think that, like people just get stuck up on that message and forget that, hey, at the end of the day, like if we're just eating nutritious food that's good for our body, food that's meant to be eaten, as opposed to what's chemically, made in a lab that, I think will fix a lot of issues. So along those lines, okay, so it, not necessarily question, but like what myths, right? Obviously there's a ton of myths around. Like what are some of the myths that you're seeing, or you get asked like, hey, for example, one for us is always like, if I want to lose weight, I need to start running. And running is great. And I don't mean to knock anybody who runs. I enjoy running myself, but like we've been like, it's been kind of ingrained in our mind over the last 10, 15, 20, 30 years of, hey, in order to lose weight, I just need to go do more cardio, right? And cardio is great and it'll get you moving, but there's more efficient ways. So like what are some of the myths from around a nutritional standpoint that you're kind of trying to debunk a little bit?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest is calories in, calories out. That's just the answer. Like, it doesn't matter what you eat, it's just calories in, calories out. But if you look at 100 calories of chocolate cake versus 100 calories of raw cashews, like it is your body has to deal with those calories differently, both. So your body has to deal with the sugar and the refined flour and probably hydrogenated fat of a chocolate cake versus great fats and fiber and protein in 100 calories of cashews. So your body just has to deal with those differently. Aside from the fact that you'll be tired and hungry after the cake, and so
right.
It's so simple, it's hard to describe, but we totally believe it, and a lot of plans will steer you in that direction. Well, you have this many calories in a day, gamble and use them as you will, just so you stay within that range.
Right.
And I think the other kind of, there's the other, like there's two, there's 1,000, but another is that, I just lost my train of thought, is for gosh, yeah, I know, I got you. So the other problem is that nutrition has equaled weight loss, period. And
right.
And that if you're gonna, one thing, if you're gonna come to me as a nutritionist, I'm gonna tell you to eat less. And a lot of times people aren't eating enough.
Yeah.
But I guess it's again that, the question that my client had for me about nutrition. Nutrition has become, you're healthier if you lose weight. Nutrition is weight loss. It's really, it kind of might be a byproduct, that weight loss. But when you focus on your health and getting your body systems working and your energy and your sleep, that's what nutrition really is. Right. So it's so strange that it's the diet industry, again, it's just not focused on health and nutrition.
Absolutely. Right. And I think, I think just in general, right, like the health and wellness industry it's such a kind of twisted industry, if that's the right word, where it's like you get snake oil salesmen and you get, like all these things, and they're trying to push these things, but in reality we're not focused on just getting people healthier, right? We're focused on trying to sell them something when, or it's like the medical industry, for example. It's unfortunately, I believe that the medical industry is very like reactive and not proactive, right? Like they make more money, trying to fix an issue versus preventing the issue, right? And I think similar, that trickles down into the health and wellness industry, and I think people get into our industry thinking they can make a quick buck, when in reality, that just sets people up for failure, whether it's a nutrition or fitness or whatever, right?
Right.
So what isn't talked about enough? Maybe that was another question I had. So, like, for example, for us, I feel like the idea of, recovery, for example, right, isn't talked about enough. Like, so often you get the no pain, no gain, or, if you're not dying, you're not trying, like all those like hardcore mentalities, right? When in reality, rest and recovery should be something that we focus on as well, because that's ultimately when our body is healing, and it's getting bigger, it's getting stronger, it's getting fast, like whatever it may be. So like, what are some things that aren't talked enough about in terms of nutrition?
quite a few things, but what comes to mind first is food quality. So it's important in all of your choices that you make with food, but maybe like recovery, it's this afterthought. Like we spend all this time on the workout and oh yeah, make sure you stretch, make sure you recover. You're right, that needs to be like part of the whole deal. And food quality sort of becomes the next step. Like, okay, eat these foods, get on, eat your whole foods, eat your real foods, fruits and vegetables, protein. And then, because I think that's a lot to take on depending on wherever you are in your journey and what you're currently eating. And then it's like, okay, now let's look at the quality, where it should probably be ingrained a little more, because there's so many things about food you could eat the right things, but if they're not the right quality, like I'll use bread as an example. If you're eating bread versus eating there's so many other better options. Organic would be the first thing. And I use bread because I think it's the most toxic. So bread is fine. And let's say you bought some bread even from the bakery, but bread that's not organic, the farmers are using glyphosate on the crop. Yeah. And glyphosate is Roundup. It's a weed killer. So that's not good for people because it kills weeds, right? So it's not something we were made to ingest and deal with. I mean, it's so obvious.
Yeah.
So it just frustrates me to see whether there are safe amounts of this or not. So here's like, if we really want to get frustrated about it, they use the glyphosate to kill the weeds so they can have more crops, right? And then what the farmers have realized is that once they harvest the wheat and it has to dry out a certain amount so that then they can grind it into flour, if they treat it a second time with glyphosate, it will dry faster. There's no risk of weeds to the harvested wheat, right? But it dries it faster. They can get it to market faster. So then we're ingesting more glyphosate when we're not really being careful about the quality. So it's not just to be doom and gloom and say, it'd be great if you ate organic. Like, it would be like life-changing if that was one change you made to just eat organic bread, like life-changing. I know a lot of people say, well, why do so many people have celiac disease now? Nobody had celiac when I was a kid, and a lot of it has to do with that glyphosate. And the quality of the wheat that we're starting with. A lot of them have been genetically modified. A lot of people will go to Europe and feel fine when they eat wonderful, ancient grain bread that was meant to be ingested. So I try not to go down that doom and gloom path, but that would be one thing that, so food quality. I mean, if you are doing the best you can, you're going to the farmer's market and talking to the farmers and buying that kind of produce and meat from small farmers, so that your meat is eating the right thing it's supposed to eat. Because if it's eating the right thing and you're eating that meat, everybody's healthy. That's it in a nutshell. But food quality isn't talked about enough, and I think it's talked about a little, but maybe not totally understood, is the emotional relationship with food. Yeah, it's such a tangled web, because people feel bad when they eat emotionally. So like they're feeling bad and then they eat emotionally and then they feel bad about eating it, right? Right. And I think we need to respect the fact that food is celebration. Yeah. And food is comforting. And just, I mean, is simply put, nobody's doing anything purposely to be eating in a poor way.
Right.
It's not nobody's fault, right?
Yeah.
And so like that's a lot there, but I think emotion is not talked about enough, or just kind of respected and understood. It's not just like, why wouldn't that person just eat better? Well,
Right.
I mean, there's so many things we could do better,
Right.
like we just can't do the best at everything all the time. And we have to eat every day. So it's such a hard thing for some people.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I guess that kind of that whole adage of like comfort food, right? Like what is
Yeah.
comfort food? It like, it's things that remind you of like your past and maybe the good times or whatever. Right. So I think very much, absolutely. Like there's emotional things that are connected to food and um yeah, and I think people, making people feel bad about the fact that, they ate because they were having a bad day, like is not gonna
Right.
fix the issue, right? Like it'll just
No.
further
Mm-mm.
compound the issue, and they're gonna continue to go back to what makes them feel good, right? Because going back to how our food is made, right? Like it's essentially made to hit pleasure centers in our brain, and it's
Right.
essentially made, to make us feel good, so that way we keep eating it, going, hey, like that cake at least initially made me feel really good, like I'll go eat more because I feel like crap right now, so
Mm-hmm.
and I think, helping people realize that, it's okay that there's emotional connection to food, is a good thing.
It is. I do a lot of that in my consulting, because I have to kind of set the framework for what we're doing, because I think the idea is that if you hire me as your consultant, you're going to tell me what you ate and I'm going to tell you what you did wrong, and you're going to feel bad and you're going to try. And
Right.
so a lot of, like it shouldn't be that way, but there's something about nutrition that has become that way. And so a lot of times our conversations are, they'll fess up like we're in a confessional. And this is,
Right.
here's what I did the past week. They'll confess their sins or whatever. And it's kind of where my days of being a kindergarten teacher come in, and like we're always accentuating the positive, right? So okay, so you had, to use chocolate cake because that's what we're talking about today. So
Right.
say you had chocolate cake. Tell me about literally the 21 other meals you had or 30 other meals you had, right? We're going to talk about this one thing of chocolate cake.
Right.
It's just having more good meals than bad, right? And
Right.
it's just, that's what consistency is. Consistency isn't perfection. It's just doing better than you were. And
Right.
that just is such a win for people. Because what I usually hear people say is, okay, I fell off the wagon, but oh my goodness, it wasn't anything like I would have done in the past. Because there's the understanding that we're just doing better every day versus you have 30 days to be perfect. And when you're not, the rules of dieting are unwritten and they say you quit.
Right.
So just getting past that pattern of, well, I give up. I messed up on day 22.
Yeah.
So forget it.
Right.
That doesn't make any sense, but we've all done it.
Right. And I think that, kind of talking consistency is huge. And I think that's one thing that we talk to our members about, and going, hey, your fitness, weight loss journey, whatever it may be, isn't going to be a 30-day thing. It isn't going to, like, this needs to be a marathon. Like, you're going to fall off the wagon, and that's okay. It's how you respond and how you get back on the wagon. And I think to your point of like, hey, you know what? Okay, I quote unquote messed up, right? I had a piece of chocolate cake. Like, what's your next meal look like to get you back on the wagon versus, oh, well, like I had pizza for breakfast, like I'm just going to spiral downhill and I'm gonna have, whatever for lunch and whatever for like, oh, I already lost the day. And it's like, well, no, just get back on the wagon, be consistent with it. And I think similar with fitness, it's like, hey, okay, you didn't make it to the gym today. That's not a big deal. But what are we going to do to make sure that it doesn't compound into a day, 2 days, a week, 4 weeks, a month before you
right.
you gym again?
That's far more powerful.
No,
it's, I don't get excited, but it's nice when people sort of mess up when we're working together, because we have something to work with, right? Because if you just do what I say for the time we work together and you're perfect, it's like a kid who goes off to college, but they never had any issues at home. And then they go off and get in trouble and they spiral because they've never failed,
Right.
like the failing and getting through to the other side is where the learning happens. Doing exactly what I say every day is, might not get you there.
Right. Absolutely. So, like I mentioned before, right, we're recording this towards the end of 2022, but when this gets released, it'll be 2023. So, like, what 2 to 3 pieces of advice do you have for somebody, right, who says, hey, I'm going to make 2023 my healthiest year ever. I'm going to start working out. I'm going to start eating better. Like, what are the 2 to 3 pieces of advice that you would have for them?
Okay. I'm writing something down because it just came to me. I'll do that. I'll start with that one first. When you have a start of a new year, a lot of times people are looking for something and looking for some direction. And like we mentioned keto before, and you're going to see all the things out there. I just think experiment a little with things that make sense to you, but don't take a hard stance on anything. Like, don't say, I'm doing keto, because a couple things happen. You are setting yourself up for failure. Like, you say keto is the thing. I'm keto. I got to look for this keto. And your family freaks out and doesn't know how to cook for you. And it just becomes this big thing. So if you do stray from it, then you feel bad and like you've failed, and you might as well quit the whole nutrition journey altogether, right? The other thing with like taking the stance on a label is that then you go grocery shopping and you've got these blinders on for that label, and you're
Right.
not using your common sense. If it says keto, it's in, and like you said, a lot of times those artificial sweeteners come in, and lots and lots of cheese, and it just doesn't look like nutrition. And so, and all kinds of things can happen. Plant-based can happen that way, and things will get this plant-based label, and you're just seeing it for that. So don't take a hard stance on anything. And then the tip where just how everybody should start is drinking the right amount of water. And I think we've said this for years, and everybody's like, yeah, 8 glasses of water. Yeah, I drink enough water. I drink a lot of water. You can drink too much water. So it's like, drink the right amount of water. Because I think it's easy too, when you hear a good tip, to overdo it.
Sure.
So, right. So my tip is drink the right amount of water, not drink a lot of water, drink the right amount of water. So, the easiest way that I know is to take your body weight and divide that by 2, and drink that many ounces.
Mm-hmm.
And pay attention to your body, right? If you had a really sweaty workout, you're going to want to drink a little more. It's also good to use a good salt. And the reason it's like a good salt for your electrolytes to stay hydrated. And the reason you don't want to go overboard on water is that if you drink too much water, then the balance of your electrolytes can get watered down and washed out, and you can feel awful. But adding a good healthy salt, just make sure it's colorful, like a pink salt or a gray salt, not a bleached out white salt. Just use that on your food, sprinkle it in your water, because we all have a salt requirement, and it's about a teaspoon a day. So that goes kind of hand in hand with water. And then just simply get protein at each meal. Give yourself some time in between meals to digest your food. And then honestly, hire a nutritionist.
Absolutely.
Because I say add protein. I don't know what you're eating already, right? I don't know if maybe you're eating too much protein. But everybody is so different, and you don't have to know this. I think a lot of people feel bad that well, I should just know what to eat. I should know how to do this. And like, I took my car into the shop a couple weeks ago, and I didn't say to the people there, I should know how to fix my brakes. I feel so bad. I'm bringing it into the professional who knows how to fix brakes,
Right.
It's no, you don't have to know this. It's way too difficult. So yeah, I mean, all those are great advice, but everybody's different, and you're doing different things. Your activity level is different. Your age is different. Your history is different. So I would say hire a nutritionist.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. That's some great tips. And so, I want to be cognizant of your time. So before we kind of sign off, if somebody is listening to this and they're like, hey, you know what? Absolutely. I totally get it. Like, I want to work with Molly. Like, what's the best way that they can get in contact with you?
That's a great question. Thank you. So my website is eatrealfoodnutrition.com. And if you go to my website, there's a button right there to schedule a free consultation. And in that way, you can, usually what happens in that consultation is people just tell me what they're interested in, and what their struggles have been and what their goals are. And usually in that conversation, I can give you a great idea of how I can help you in the future, but I also try to send you away with something you can do right away.
Yeah.
That it's useful and helpful. So eatrealfoodnutrition.com. And then you can also follow me on Instagram at eatrealfoodnutrition. And you can kind of see how I'm trying to educate and give ideas and recipes and things like that.
Awesome. Perfect. So if you guys are interested in learning a little bit more or working with Molly, please check her out on Instagram at Eat Real Food Nutrition, or on her website at eatrealfoodnutrition.com. Once again, thank you so much, Molly. I appreciate you hopping on, and looking forward to collaborating with you in the future, and doing a ton of awesome things. But yeah, I appreciate you jumping on with me.
So thank you so much for having me. Yeah. It is always easy to talk with you about nutrition, and we're just getting started, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. All right, guys. Well, that is it for this episode of Prodigy's Simply Fit podcast. Once again, I'm Andrew Hamill. I was joined today by Molly Obert of Eat Real Food Nutrition, and I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.